I traveled across the country for my son's graduation, filled with anticipation and pride, only to find myself watching from a distant parking lot, the ceremony unfolding far beyond my reach. The emotions tangled within me as I witnessed the culmination of his hard work and dedication on a small screen, surrounded by strangers who shared my disappointment. I had envisioned a day of celebration, of standing proudly among family and friends, but instead, I found myself an outsider to my own son's triumph. Yet one thing became clear. No matter the distance or barriers, the bond we shared was unbreakable, and I was determined to honor that love. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you believe in the power of resilience and the unshakable bond between parent and child, you are in the right place. Please share your own stories in the comments. They mean the world to me. Now let me tell you what happened that day. My name is Michael Trent, and I am a father filled with a pride so deep it often feels like it might burst from my chest. This pride is all because of my son David, who is on the cusp of a milestone I've dreamed about since the day he was born. His college graduation. It's a moment that for me represents years of sacrifice, hope, and unwavering faith in his future. I've lived my life in a small town, the kind where everybody knows your name and your business, where the days pass with the quiet predictability of a slow-moving river. Yet my heart has always been set on something bigger for David, and now as I sit behind the wheel of my aging sedan, staring out at the endless stretch of highway before me, I am filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. The journey to this point hasn't been easy. I come from humble beginnings, working jobs that barely kept the lights on and the rent paid. I remember the nights I stayed up late talking to David about his dreams, about college, about the person he wanted to become. I worked double shifts, sometimes 3 jobs, and saved every penny I could to make sure he had the chance I never did. I remember the application fees, the textbooks, the long nights helping him with his assignments when I barely understood the material myself. All of it I carried with a quiet determination because I believed in him, in the promise of a better life. Leaving our small town before dawn, I set out on the long drive across the country to attend his graduation ceremony. It's a trip of over 1,000 miles, something I've never done before alone, but I wouldn't have missed this day for anything. The miles stretch on endlessly, the highway a ribbon of gray under the pale morning sky, and with every turn of the wheel, I think about the countless sacrifices that brought me here. The expenses I didn't question, the overtime hours I pushed through, the missed family dinners, all for this moment. As I pass through towns and cities that blur together in a haze of passing scenery, I find myself recalling the little things that made this journey so much more than just a physical trip. The phone calls with David over the past few months, his voice crackling with excitement and a bit of nervousness about the ceremony. He told me about his classes, his plans for after graduation, and the friends he'd made. I listened, proud and sometimes a little wistful, knowing that my presence at the ceremony would be a symbol of everything we'd endured to get to this point. I remember the day I booked my motel room near the university, the careful budgeting to make sure I could afford a place to rest without dipping into the money I'd set aside for the gifts and the celebratory dinner we planned. It wasn't much, but it was ours. A small act of normalcy and joy after years of hard work. I thought about the cap and gown David would wear, the tassel swinging as he walked across that stage, the applause that would greet him as he accepted his diploma. I imagined the smile on his face, the hug we would share, the pride in his eyes when he saw me there. Driving through the countryside, I felt a mixture of awe and humility. The world beyond my town was vast and unfamiliar, filled with towering buildings and busy streets, a stark contrast to the quiet fields and slow pace I was used to. But my focus never wavered. Every mile covered was a step closer to witnessing the culmination of my son's efforts and my sacrifices. I thought about my own parents who never had the chance to see me graduate from anything beyond high school, and how I wanted to give David what they could not give me, the chance to reach higher, to dream bigger. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting sharp shadows across the road, I felt the weight of both anticipation and responsibility. I wasn't just a father attending a ceremony. I was a man who had poured his heart and soul into supporting his son's education, who had dreamed alongside him through the long nights of study and doubt. I thought about the other families who would be there. So many stories of struggle and triumph woven into the fabric of that day. I wondered how many parents had made journeys like mine, how many had sacrificed just as much if not more. I kept my hand steady on the steering wheel, imagining the moment I would finally see David. I pictured the proud look he would give me, the handshake or hug, the way his eyes would light up when he spotted me in the crowd. It was the kind of moment that fathers dream of, the payoff for years of hard work and quiet hope. I reminded myself that this was not just about a ceremony or a piece of paper. It was about the journey, the resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his son. The road seemed endless, but my heart was full. I thought about the conversations we'd have afterward, the stories we'd share, the laughter, and maybe even some tears. I planned to take him out to dinner, a simple meal to celebrate, to toast to the future and the new paths he would forge. I thought about the photos I would take, capturing the joy and pride of this day, images to hold on to when the moment had passed. Every mile brought me closer to a new chapter in both our lives. I was determined to be there, not just as a spectator but as a witness to David's achievement. The sacrifices, the long hours, the worries, they all felt worth it now. I was ready to stand among the sea of families, to cheer the loudest, to tell the world that my son had made it, and that I had been there every step of the way. As the city skyline finally appeared on the horizon, the reality of the day began to settle over me. The traffic thickened, and the streets grew busier with cars and families all converging on the university campus. I felt a surge of nerves, a flutter of excitement mingled with a hint of apprehension. This was it. The moment I had dreamed of and worked for. I tightened my grip on the wheel, took a deep breath, and prepared to step into a world that felt both foreign and full of promise. In that moment I was simply Michael Trent, a father on a journey, both literal and metaphorical, driven by love, hope, and the unshakable belief in my son's future. The road behind me was long, but the road ahead was filled with possibilities. And as I crossed the threshold into the city that held my son's dreams, I felt a profound gratitude for the chance to be here, to witness this milestone, and to share in the pride that only a parent can know. The city's hum grew louder as I closed in on the university, a place so different from the quiet streets of my hometown. My heart raced, not with anxiety, but with a deep swelling excitement that I hadn't felt in years. I was about to see David walk across that stage, to celebrate not just an academic achievement but a lifetime of perseverance. The thought filled me with a pride so tangible I could almost reach out and touch it. I had counted the days, planned every step of this trip, and now finally the moment was nearly here. I had imagined this day so many times, each vision more vivid than the last. I pictured David in his cap and gown, looking every bit the part of a graduate ready to take on the world. I imagined the crowd's applause swelling as he stepped forward to receive his diploma, the way his face would light up when he saw me in the audience. It was a scene I had played over and over in my mind, one that felt both perfectly ordinary and yet profoundly extraordinary. In the days and weeks leading up to the graduation, David and I spoke often on the phone. Those conversations were a lifeline, a thread connecting us across the miles. He told me about the ceremony schedule, the reserved seating for family, and the post-ceremony gathering he hoped we could share. He was excited, nervous, and hopeful, a mix of emotions I recognized all too well. We talked about where we might eat afterward, a small celebration to mark the end of this chapter and the beginning of the next. These talks fueled my anticipation, painting a picture of a day filled with warmth, pride, and togetherness. I kept those conversations close, replaying David's words when the road grew long and my eyelids heavy. I wanted to make sure I knew everything, so I wouldn't miss a single detail or moment. David's voice, full of youthful energy and hope, gave me strength. He spoke of the professors who had shaped him, the friends who had supported him, and the future he was eager to embrace. I listened, my heart swelling with the knowledge that my son was ready to step into the world as a man who had earned every ounce of his success. As I neared the campus, I thought about the other families who would be there, each with their own stories and sacrifices. I imagined grandparents hoisting their grandchildren on their shoulders, siblings snapping photos, mothers wiping tears of joy from their eyes. I pictured the sea of proud faces, united by the shared celebration of achievement. I wanted to be among them, to feel that collective joy, to stand tall beside my son and say, "We did this together." I had made plans for the day, carefully arranged to make the most of every moment. I intended to arrive early to secure a good seat, to watch David's name called with a clear view of the stage. After the ceremony, we would find a quiet place to sit and talk, to reflect on everything that had brought us here. I had even saved up for a modest dinner at a nearby restaurant, a small indulgence to mark the occasion. It wasn't about extravagance, but about creating memories that would last a lifetime. The anticipation was almost overwhelming. I could feel it in my bones, a buzzing energy that made it hard to sit still. I found myself checking the clock repeatedly, counting down the minutes until the ceremony would begin. I thought about the speeches that would be made, the words of encouragement and hope, and I wondered if they would capture the weight of what this day meant to all of us. I hoped David would feel that weight too, the knowledge that he was standing on the shoulders of those who had supported him, even when the path was difficult. In the quiet moments before I reached the campus, I reflected on my own journey as a father. The late nights spent working extra shifts, the sacrifices made so David could have opportunities one never did. I thought about the times I doubted myself, unsure if I was doing enough, and the times I found strength in the belief that love and support could overcome any obstacle. This graduation was a testament not just to David's hard work, but to the bond we shared. A bond forged in perseverance and hope. I remembered the last phone call from David, just days before the ceremony. His voice had been tinged with excitement as he told me about the ceremony's traditions, the lineup of speakers, and the moment when the graduates would toss their caps into the air. He had asked if I planned to get there early, to which I had promised I would be there long before the sun was high. He said he couldn't wait to see me, and I told him how proud I was, how much I loved him. That conversation had stayed with me, a reminder of why this journey was so important. As the campus came into view, bustling with students and families, I parked my car and took a deep breath. The sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air, mingling with the smell of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers. It was a scene alive with joy and anticipation, a perfect backdrop for the moment I had traveled so far to witness. I felt a swell of emotion, the culmination of years of hope and hard work converging into this single point in time. I stepped out of the car, clutching the small gift bag I had brought for David, a token of my pride and love. My legs felt a bit shaky, not from weakness but from the weight of the moment. I looked around, taking in the faces of strangers who were also here to celebrate. Some smiled warmly, others spoke in low, excited tones. The energy was infectious, and I let myself be carried along by it, my heart beating in time with the collective joy. As I made my way toward the entrance, I thought about how this day was more than just a ceremony. It was a celebration of resilience, of dreams realized against all odds. It was a tribute to the countless unseen sacrifices made by parents and students alike. And it was a promise of new beginnings, a stepping stone into the future. I held onto that promise tightly, ready to share it with my son and to stand beside him as he took his place among the graduates. The moment was close now, and with every step my excitement grew. I couldn't wait to see David's face, to hear his name called, to witness the joy that would fill his eyes. I had come so far, endured so much, and now I was here, ready to celebrate the man my son had become. This was a day I would never forget, a day that would live in my heart forever. And as I moved forward, surrounded by the hum of anticipation and hope, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for being a part of it all. Stepping onto the campus felt like crossing into a world both familiar and strange. The sprawling grounds stretched out before me, alive with the vibrant energy of families, students, and faculty all converging to celebrate this monumental day. The sun shone brightly, casting sharp shadows beneath towering oak trees and glinting off the glass windows of the university's modern buildings. Everywhere I looked there was movement, laughter, hugs, excited chatter, as if the very air itself was charged with anticipation. It was a scene bursting with life, a tapestry of stories woven together by a shared moment of triumph. I found myself caught up in the tide of people streaming toward the main auditorium, the designated venue for the commencement ceremony. The path was lined with banners fluttering in the breeze, emblazoned with the university's colors and crest. I heard snippets of conversations all around me, words of pride, congratulations, and plans for the day ahead. It struck me how many faces mirrored my own mixture of excitement and nervousness, each parent and loved one silently rehearsing the moment when their graduate's name would be called. Navigating through the crowd, I looked for the family seating area, the place where I was supposed to find my spot to watch David's graduation. I clutched the program tightly, its pages filled with names, speeches, and schedules, an itinerary for the day I had waited so long to experience. But as I approached the entrance, the first hints of confusion began to unsettle me. A volunteer, clipboard in hand and a polite smile, directed me toward a side hallway, explaining that the main auditorium was at capacity and that family seating was limited. I blinked, unsure I had heard correctly. "I was told there would be reserved seats for family," I said hesitantly, my voice barely above the hum of the crowd. The volunteer nodded sympathetically but remained firm. "We're sorry, sir, but due to strict capacity limits and safety protocols, only a limited number of guests can be seated inside. Family members with tickets have been prioritized, and unfortunately, we have to direct others to overflow areas." Overflow areas? The words echoed in my mind, a vague and disappointing notion that didn't quite align with the image I had held so tightly. Still, I followed the directions, walking down a narrow corridor that led away from the auditorium's grand entrance. The noise of the ceremony drifted faintly through the walls, muffled but unmistakable, the voices of speakers, the rustling of programs, the occasional burst of applause. As I moved further away, I passed clusters of families gathered in small groups, some seated on benches, others standing anxiously near the doors, all trying to catch glimpses and sounds of the event unfolding just beyond reach. The sense of togetherness I had imagined was fractured here, replaced by a quiet frustration that hung in the air like a heavy fog. I wondered how many others were feeling the same pang of exclusion, the sting of being so close yet so far from the moment they had traveled to witness. Trying to steady my breath, I pressed on, hoping that the designated area would offer at least a decent view or some semblance of participation. But what awaited me was a stark contrast to the lively ambience I had just left. The seating was sparse, arranged in a makeshift fashion near a distant hallway, facing a wall-mounted television screen that was barely large enough for the crowd that had gathered. It was a far cry from the grandeur of the main auditorium, where the graduates were taking their rightful place under bright lights and the watchful eyes of hundreds. I sank into a folding chair, feeling the weight of disappointment settle over me. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy live feed of the ceremony. The stage bathed in harsh lighting and the audience's applause reduced to a distant murmur. I watched as the procession of faculty members in their academic regalia began, followed by the graduates filing onto the stage one by one. The image was clear enough, but the experience was hollow, like watching a play through a window, separated from the action by invisible barriers. Around me, other parents sat in silence, their faces etched with similar expressions of longing and resignation. Some whispered words of encouragement to each other, sharing stories of their own journeys to this day. Others stared at the screen, their hands clasped tightly as if willing the moment to feel more real. I realized then that I was not alone in this sense of displacement, that this crowd of strangers was united by a shared loss, the inability to fully participate in the celebration of their children's achievements. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through messages from David. He had texted earlier, his excitement palpable even through the screen of my device. "Can't wait to see you here," he had written, accompanied by a selfie of him in his cap and gown, his eyes shining with pride. The image felt bittersweet now, a reminder of the closeness we were meant to share, and the distance that had grown between us in these last few moments. Despite the disheartening circumstances, I forced myself to focus on the positive, the fact that I was here, that I had made the journey, that I was witnessing this moment in whatever way was possible. The ceremony continued on the screen. Each name called out a testament to the hard work and determination that had brought these young men and women to this point. I imagined David's name among them, the sound of it echoing through the auditorium, and I felt a swell of pride that no screen or seating arrangement could diminish. Still, the reality of my situation was difficult to ignore. I had traveled across the country, sacrificing time and money, only to find myself relegated to this distant corner, watching the most important day of my son's life unfold from behind a glass wall of technology and policy. The contrast between the vibrant celebration inside and the muted, fragmented experience outside was stark. I thought about the promises made, the expectations set, and the harsh truth of institutional limits that had turned my dream of a shared moment into a solitary vigil. As the ceremony progressed, I scanned the crowd, noting the faces of other parents who, like me, bore the weight of this unexpected exclusion. There was a quiet dignity in their presence, a silent determination not to let this moment slip away despite the obstacles. We were united not just by our love for our children, but by the resilience to endure this disappointment with grace. In that makeshift viewing area surrounded by strangers who shared my story, I found a strange sense of community. We exchanged nods and brief smiles, small gestures of solidarity in a moment that could have been isolating. The shared experience forged a bond, a reminder that while the ceremony might be out of reach, the pride we felt was as close as the beating of our own hearts. I glanced at my watch, realizing that the moment I had traveled so far to see was unfolding right before me, even if not in the way I had envisioned. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the tide of frustration and sadness. My son was graduating. He had achieved something remarkable. And though the path to witnessing it had been altered, the meaning of the day remained untouched. As I settled into my seat, eyes fixed on the flickering screen, I resolved to be present in this moment, to carry the pride and love that had brought me here, no matter the circumstances. The journey was far from over, and I knew that the real celebration would come when I finally stood face to face with David. Until then, I would hold on to the hope and the anticipation, ready for what lay ahead. The harsh reality of the situation hit me fully as I settled into the uneven folding chair, surrounded on all sides by idling cars and strangers who, like me, had been pushed aside from the heart of the celebration. I had come so far, traversing state lines and countless highways, only to find myself not inside the grand university auditorium but outside, in a sprawling parking lot several blocks away. The ceremony was playing out in a small, grainy video feed on a shaky television mounted on a makeshift stand beside the asphalt, a far cry from the vibrant, communal experience I had imagined. The parking lot was filled with families huddled around their vehicles, some sitting in lawn chairs, others leaning against the hoods of their cars, all trying to catch a glimpse of the event through phones, tablets, or the communal screen. The sound came faintly from portable speakers, a tinny echo of the applause and speeches that must have been booming inside the auditorium. The distance between me and my son felt like a chasm, wide and unbridgeable, carved not by miles but by rules and overcrowding. I watched intently as the procession of graduates began, the camera panning over the stage where the dignitaries took their seats. The screen flickered, the image occasionally glitching, but I could see the line of students filing onto the stage, their caps and gowns a sea of black interrupted by the gleam of tassels and the sparkle of proud smiles. And then there he was, David, walking with a steady, confident stride, his face breaking into a grin as he shook hands with the university president. I felt a swell of pride so fierce it nearly overwhelmed me. But the joy was tempered by the reality of my surroundings. I was not sitting among family and friends, enveloped in the warmth of shared celebration. Instead, I was surrounded by the cold concrete of the lot, cars idling in the summer heat, the murmur of distant voices merging with the hum of engines. The screen was small, the sound distorted, and the connection to the moment fragile. It was as if the ceremony was happening through a pane of glass, not just physically but emotionally. I glanced around at the other parents and loved ones gathered there. Their faces were a mixture of hope and resignation, eyes glued to the screen, hearts tethered to the names being called out one by one. Many held tissues, some wiped away tears, while others clenched fists in quiet celebration. Despite the distance and the makeshift setup, the love and pride in the air were unmistakable. We were a community of spectators forced into the shadows, yet bound together by the same invisible thread of parental devotion. The weight of isolation pressed down on me. This was supposed to be a day of unity, of togetherness, of shared triumph. Instead, I was on the periphery, a witness to my son's success from the sidelines. The image of David's smiling face as he accepted his diploma was both a source of immense pride and a painful reminder of the barriers that kept me from joining the crowd inside. I felt the sting of exclusion deep in my chest, a sharp contrast to the joy of seeing my son achieve this milestone. Yet, even in this detached state, the significance of the moment was not lost on me. Watching David walk across the stage, hearing his name announced, was a culmination of years of hard work. Not just his but mine as well. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the late nights, the extra shifts, the moments of doubt that I had pushed through to ensure he had every opportunity. This moment on the screen was proof that those sacrifices had not been in vain. I tried to focus on the ceremony itself, the speeches, the applause, the rituals that marked this rite of passage. The speakers spoke of perseverance, of dreams realized, of futures bright with possibility. Their words echoed faintly in the open air, carried away by the breeze, but inside me, they resonated with a profound truth. This day was bigger than any one person, bigger than the confines of the auditorium or the limitations of seating capacity. It was a celebration of achievement, of hope, of the relentless pursuit of better. Despite the distance, I felt connected to the thousands gathered inside, to the students in their caps and gowns, and to the families supporting them. The screen may have been small, the surroundings less than ideal, but the essence of the day, the pride, the joy, the accomplishment was palpable. I clutched my phone tightly, scrolling through messages from friends and family who had called or texted their congratulations. I sent a quick message to David, telling him how proud I was, even though I could only watch from afar. The sun beat down relentlessly, the heat rising off the asphalt in waves. I wiped the sweat from my brow and tried to settle into this new reality, this unexpected vantage point from which to witness such a pivotal moment. The parking lot, with its rows of cars and clusters of people, was an unlikely stage for a graduation ceremony, but it was where I was, and I was determined to make the most of it. As the ceremony drew to a close, I saw the graduates toss their caps into the air, a jubilant explosion of black fabric against the blue sky. The crowd inside erupted in cheers, their joy spilling out into the warm afternoon. I couldn't hear the cheers, only the faintest echo through the speakers, but I could see the smiles and exuberance on the faces of the graduates. I imagined David among them, laughing and celebrating with his friends, his heart full of hope and accomplishment. In that moment, surrounded by cars and strangers, I felt both the ache of separation and the unshakable bond that connected me to my son. The physical distance was vast, but the love and pride I carried were closer than ever. I realized that while I might be watching through a screen in a parking lot, my presence was still a part of this day. My journey, my sacrifices, and my unwavering support had helped bring David to this moment, and nothing could diminish that truth. I sat back in my chair, the hum of the parking lot around me, and let the emotions wash over me. The joy, the disappointment, the pride, and the longing all mingled in a complex tapestry of feelings. I knew this wasn't the graduation day I had envisioned, but it was real, and it was ours. And as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the lot, I held on to the knowledge that this moment, imperfect though it was, marked the beginning of everything David had worked so hard to achieve. Surrounded by the sea of cars and scattered clusters of families, I felt an overwhelming sense of invisibility settle over me. Here I was, a father who had crossed countless miles and overcome so many hurdles just to be present for this moment. Yet my presence was reduced to a mere shadow among strangers in a distant parking lot. The ceremony, the applause, the joyous tears, all were happening somewhere else, beyond the reach of my outstretched hands and hopeful heart. I was a spectator to my own son's triumph, invisible to the world that should have been celebrating with me. The sun beat down relentlessly, its warmth both comforting and cruel, as it highlighted the stark contrast between the vibrant celebration inside the auditorium and the muted reality outside. I looked around at the other parents and loved ones who had also been relegated to this peripheral space. Their faces mirrored my own mixture of pride and pain, eyes fixed on the flickering screen, hands clenched tightly in silent support, hearts aching with the knowledge that this was not where we had planned to be. Despite the physical distance and the barriers that separated us, I found a bittersweet solace in the shared experience. These strangers, these fellow parents, were bound to me by a common thread: a fierce, unyielding love for our children and an unspoken understanding of the sacrifices made to get here. We exchanged small, knowing glances, brief nods of encouragement, and quiet smiles that acknowledged our collective struggle. In this unexpected fellowship, I felt less alone, even as I remained on the sidelines. I watched as a mother beside me dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue, her lips pressed into a determined line. A father a few feet away adjusted his cap nervously, his gaze never wavering from the screen. A grandmother held a small child close, whispering words of comfort and pride. Each person carried their own story of hope and hardship, and together we formed an unspoken community of resilience. The isolation was real, but so was the bond that connected us in this moment of shared longing. The screen continued to display the ceremony. Each name called out a beacon of achievement and promise. I imagined the graduates' footsteps echoing through the auditorium, the proud smiles they wore as they accepted their diplomas, the cheers that filled the room. Yet here in the parking lot the sounds were faint and the images small. It was a disheartening juxtaposition, so close to the celebration, yet so far removed from its warmth and energy. Still, I refused to let the circumstances diminish the significance of the day. This was my son's moment, and no matter where I sat, my pride was as vivid and powerful as if I were seated in the front row. I thought about all the obstacles we had overcome, financial struggles, long nights of study, moments of doubt and fear, and how each one had led to this triumph. The distance, the discomfort, the invisibility, they were mere shadows compared to the light of David's accomplishment. I pulled my jacket tighter around me as a breeze stirred the heat away, the movement a small comfort against the starkness of the setting. I caught the eye of a woman nearby, her expression weary but resolute. We shared a brief smile, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had each traveled. It was in these small moments of connection that the isolation began to lift, replaced by a quiet strength born from shared understanding. The thought crossed my mind that perhaps the ceremony's true meaning transcended the physical space in which it was held. It wasn't confined to the auditorium or the applause or the formalities. It was something more profound, the culmination of years of effort, love and sacrifice, carried in the hearts of every parent and graduate. And while I might have been invisible to the world today, I was visible to my son, and that was what mattered most. Around me, others began to take out their phones, capturing photos of the distant campus, the makeshift gathering, the screen that brought us together. These were memories in their own right, testaments to resilience and presence in the face of disappointment. I lifted my own phone, snapping a picture of the parking lot, the cars, the small crowd of parents united by circumstance. It was a reminder that this day, imperfect as it was still a day of celebration. I thought about the stories that would be told when we returned home, the tales of sacrifice and perseverance, the journey across states and time zones, the bittersweet nature of the ceremony. These stories would carry the truth of this day, not just the polished moments captured in official photographs, but the raw, real experiences that defined our love and commitment. As the ceremony on the screen neared its conclusion, I felt a deep well of emotion rise within me. The pride in my son's accomplishment mingled with the ache of separation, creating a complex tapestry of feelings. I closed my eyes briefly, breathing in the moment, grounding myself in the knowledge that love and support transcend physical barriers. This moment, though imperfect, was ours. When I opened my eyes, the screen showed the graduates tossing their caps into the air, a jubilant explosion of black fabric against the clear sky. The cheers from the auditorium echoed faintly through the speakers, a distant celebration that I longed to join. Yet, even from this remote vantage point, I felt the pulse of joy, the shared triumph of a milestone reached. I glanced around once more at the faces of the parents and families gathered in the parking lot, each carrying their own mix of pride and longing. In that shared gaze, I found a renewed sense of connection and resolve. We might be invisible to the world today, but we were seen by those who mattered most. Our presence, our love, our pride, these were the true markers of this day. And so, surrounded by strangers who had become kindred spirits through circumstance, I held on to the bittersweet beauty of this moment. The ceremony might have unfolded beyond my reach, but the celebration lived on within me, a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds between parent and child. I pulled my phone from my pocket, fingers trembling slightly as I searched for David's number. The noise of the parking lot, conversations, car engines, the faint audio from the ceremony, buzzed around me, making it difficult to concentrate. I wanted to hear his voice, to share this moment with him despite the distance and the barriers that kept us apart. My thumb hovered over the call button for a moment before I pressed it, hoping the connection would hold and that he would answer. The line rang several times, each tone stretching longer than the last, until finally, his voice came through, warm and familiar. "Hey, Dad," David said, a hint of surprise and happiness in his tone. "Did you get to see everything? How's it going out there?" I smiled, relief flooding through me. "Hi, son. I'm here watching as best I can. It's not the way I imagined, but I'm here. I want to hear all about it. The ceremony, your friends, what's next?" His voice softened, and I could hear the faint murmur of celebration behind him. Laughter, congratulations, the clinking of glasses. "It's been amazing. I'm sorry you couldn't be inside, but I saw you on the screen, Dad. I know you made it, and that means everything to me. The connection was shaky, voices dipping in and out as the noise around us interfered, but the words were clear enough to reach deep inside me. I told him how proud I was, how much I loved him, how this day was a testament to his hard work and our journey together. We spoke about the ceremony's highlights. His speech, the names called, the way the crowd cheered. His excitement was contagious, and I found myself smiling despite the circumstances. Trying to hear over the background noise, I asked about the post-ceremony plans. David told me about the gathering his friends had organized, the photos they were taking, the plans to celebrate together. He wanted me to join them, to share in the joy beyond the formalities. I promised him I would, grateful for the chance to be part of the extended celebration, even if it was different from what I had envisioned. The call was brief, interrupted by static and the bustle of the crowd around me. But in those few minutes, I felt a connection that bridged the physical and emotional distance. Hearing David's voice, sharing in his excitement, reminded me that this day was about more than the ceremony. It was about the bond between us, the journey we had traveled, and the future he was stepping into. After we hung up, I looked around the parking lot with new eyes. The strangers who had seemed distant moments before now felt like fellow travelers on this path. We were all here for the same reason, to honor our children's achievements and to support them as they stepped into the next chapter of their lives. The noise, the discomfort, the unexpected setting, it all faded into the background as the shared love and pride took center stage. I took a deep breath and settled back into my seat, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't the day I had imagined, but it was still a day filled with meaning. I thought about the years of sacrifice, the late nights, the hard choices, and knew that none of it was wasted. My presence here, no matter how far from the stage, was a testament to the strength of a father's love. As the ceremony continued on the screen, I found myself reflecting on what truly mattered. It wasn't the location or the grandeur of the event. It was the accomplishment, the resilience, and the promise of what was to come. David's voice, filled with hope and gratitude, echoed in my mind, a reminder that the journey was far from over. I glanced at my phone again, scrolling through photos and messages, each one a small thread weaving together the story of today. I thought about the conversations still to come, the celebrations yet to be shared, and the memories we would build long after the cameras stopped rolling. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of the parking lot and the distant sounds of the ceremony, I found peace. The barriers that had separated me from the heart of the event could not diminish the pride I carried or the bond one shared with my son. This day was ours, imperfect, unexpected, but deeply meaningful. And as I watched the screen flicker with images of graduates moving across the stage, I knew that no matter where I was seated, I was part of this moment. My journey had brought me here, and my love would carry me forward, ready to support David in every step he took beyond that stage. As the final names were read and the last of the graduates took their bow on the distant stage, the ceremony began to wind down, and a bittersweet clarity settled over me. Around me, the families who had gathered in this unlikely place began to stir, their conversations growing more animated as the formal event drew to a close inside the auditorium. I watched as parents and siblings inside the campus walls embraced, their joy spilling into the open air, a stark contrast to the quiet stillness of the parking lot where I sat. The gulf between us felt immense, a physical and emotional barrier that underscored my sense of exclusion. Despite this, I resolved to hold fast to the pride and love that had brought me here. The imperfect nature of the experience couldn't diminish the significance of what David had achieved, not just today, but throughout his entire journey. Watching families celebrate in person reminded me of the communal joy I had hoped to share, yet it also deepened my determination to find meaning in this moment, even from a distance. I lifted my phone and began taking photos of the scene around me. The sprawling campus bathed in golden afternoon light, the distant crowd dispersing, the banners fluttering gently in the breeze. Each image felt like a fragment of the story I wanted to tell, a visual testament to the complex emotions swirling within me. The photos captured the contrast of this day, the grandeur of the university, the celebrations inside, and the quiet resilience of those of us watching from afar. As I snapped pictures, I noticed others doing the same, parents and family members preserving memories in their own way, documenting the journey with cameras and phones. It was a silent acknowledgement that while we might not have been in the heart of the ceremony, We were still part of its fabric. These images would serve as reminders of the day's significance, evidence of our presence and our unwavering support. The sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the pavement and painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The atmosphere shifted subtly, the energy softening as the formalities ended and the informal celebrations began. I thought about David and his friends, imagining them gathering nearby, their laughter and excitement filling the air. I felt a pang of longing to join them, to step out from the periphery and into the warmth of shared joy. Yet, even as the sense of exclusion lingered, I found solace in the quiet moments, the gentle breeze, the fading light, the knowledge that this day marked a turning point for my son. The emotions were complex, a mix of pride, longing, and acceptance. I realized that while the setting was not what I had envisioned, the essence of the day, the celebration of achievement and the promise of the future, remained intact. I lowered my phone and gazed out toward the university buildings, imagining the stories unfolding inside. Hugs exchanged, tears shed, dreams discussed. The campus, alive with possibility, stood as a symbol of all that David had worked for and all that lay ahead. I felt a profound gratitude for the opportunity to witness this moment, however imperfectly. Around me, the crowd began to disperse, families gathering their belongings and making their way to cars and buses. The sense of community we had shared was fading but not forgotten. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the tide of emotions, and prepared to move forward with renewed resolve. As the sky darkened and the evening approached, I thought about the reunion that awaited me, the chance to finally stand beside David, to share in his joy face to face. That moment would be the true celebration, the culmination of years of sacrifice and love. I held on to that hope as I folded my chair and gathered my things, ready to leave the parking lot behind and step into the next chapter of this day. With one last glance at the fading scene around me, I felt a quiet strength settle within. The journey had been long, the experience unexpected, but the love and pride I carried were unwavering. And as I made my way toward the exit, I knew that no matter where this day had taken me, I was forever connected to my son and his remarkable achievement. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived as I stepped off the campus grounds and into the cool shade of a nearby cafe, where David was waiting. The distance that had separated us all day, both physical and emotional, seemed to dissolve the instant our eyes met. He looked different without the cap and gown, more relaxed yet still carrying the unmistakable glow of accomplishment. His smile was wide and genuine, and for a brief moment, the long journey and the frustrations of the day faded into the background. "Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he pulled me into a tight embrace. The warmth of that hug was everything I had imagined and more, a balm for the disappointment of the earlier hours. In that embrace I felt a profound connection, a mutual recognition of the sacrifices we had both made to reach this milestone. It was a quiet celebration, intimate and powerful, a reaffirmation of our bond. As we sat down at a small table, David apologized softly for the restrictions that had kept me from attending the ceremony in person. "I'm sorry it wasn't what you expected," he said, his eyes earnest. "I wanted you there with me, front and center." I shook my head, squeezing his hand. "Son, I'm just grateful to be here with you now. The ceremony, the seats, it didn't matter. What matters is you, and that I got to see you afterward." He nodded, the weight of the day settling over us both. We talked quietly about the ceremony, the speeches, the moments that stood out to him. David's excitement returned as he recounted the details, the friends he hugged, the professors who congratulated him, the sense of accomplishment that filled the air. His joy was infectious, and I found myself sharing in it more fully than I had all day. Our conversation shifted to the future, the plans he had made, the aspirations he held, the path he was ready to take. I listened intently, proud and hopeful, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. We spoke of the challenges ahead, but also of the confidence and resilience he had gained through his education and experiences. There was a quiet determination in his voice, a readiness to face whatever came next. As we finished our meal, the cafe bustling around us, I felt a deep sense of peace. Despite the obstacles and the unexpected circumstances, we had found our way back to each other. This moment, simple and unadorned, was a true celebration, a testament to the strength of our relationship and the journey we had shared. Before parting ways, David reached across the table and squeezed my hand again. "Thanks for coming, Dad. It means more than I can say." I smiled, my heart full. "Always, son. Always." Walking away from the cafe, I carried with me the warmth of that reunion, a beacon of hope and love that would guide me through whatever challenges lay ahead. The day's difficulties faded in the light of this connection, and I knew that no matter what, our bond was unbreakable. As I made my way back to the quiet solitude of my motel room that evening, the events of the day swirled in my mind like a restless tide. The joy of reuniting with David was tempered by the lingering ache of the barriers that had kept us apart during the ceremony. I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had been lost, not just for me, but for so many other parents who had traveled long distances, sacrificing time and resources, only to find themselves on the fringes of the celebration. I reflected on the logistical hurdles that had shaped the day: the overcrowded auditorium, the strict seating policies, the reliance on remote viewing areas far removed from the heart of the event. These measures, no doubt, were implemented with safety and order in mind, but the unintended consequence was a fracture in the shared experience that graduation is supposed to embody. It struck me as a profound oversight, a failure to fully honor the sacrifices made by families like mine who had invested so much to be present. The memory of watching David's graduation on a small screen, surrounded by strangers in a parking lot several blocks away, stayed with me. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant celebration happening inside, a reminder of how institutional policies can inadvertently create emotional distance. I thought about the other parents I had seen, faces etched with pride and disappointment, and wondered how many stories like mine were unfolding that day. Beyond the physical barriers, there were social ones as well. The carefully orchestrated event, designed to accommodate thousands, seemed to prioritize efficiency over inclusivity. The experience felt transactional, a procession of names called out and diplomas handed over, but lacking the warmth and communal spirit that make such milestones truly meaningful. I imagined how different it might have been had families been welcomed fully, their presence embraced as integral to the ceremony rather than an afterthought. In the quiet of the night, I considered how institutions might better accommodate families in the future. Perhaps a more thoughtful approach to seating, better communication about attendance limitations, or enhanced live streaming options that allowed for interactive participation. Maybe even smaller, more intimate ceremonies or additional events that acknowledged the diverse needs of families traveling from afar. The goal, I realized, should be to bridge gaps rather than deepen them, to create spaces where pride and celebration could be shared openly and joyously. I also thought about the power of storytelling, the importance of sharing experiences like mine to spark change. The narratives of parents who sacrifice and strive, who travel great distances to witness their children's achievements, deserve to be heard. Their voices can illuminate the gaps in the system and inspire improvements that make future ceremonies more inclusive and heartfelt. Despite the challenges, I knew that my pride in David was unshaken. The barriers we encountered did not diminish his accomplishment or the love that had fueled his journey. Yet, I felt a responsibility to advocate for a more compassionate approach, one that recognizes the vital role families play in these pivotal moments. Graduation is not just a rite of passage for students. It is a shared triumph for those who have supported them along the way. As I prepared for sleep, I resolved to carry these reflections forward, to use my experience not only to celebrate David's success, but to contribute to a broader conversation about how we honor family sacrifices in educational milestones. The day had been imperfect, but it was also instructive, a catalyst for change that I hoped would lead to better experiences for others. In the stillness of that night, I found a quiet hope that institutions would listen, that policies would evolve, and that future graduates and their families would find themselves fully embraced in moments of celebration. Until then, I would hold on to the pride and love that defined this day, carrying them like a torch to light the way forward. As the days passed after the graduation, I found myself reflecting deeply on the imperfect experience I had endured, yet ultimately embracing it with a sense of peace and pride. Despite the barriers and unexpected challenges, my heart remained full, buoyed by the undeniable truth that David's accomplishment was a beacon of hope and resilience, one that transcended the physical limitations we had faced that day. I came to understand that pride and love are not confined to grand events or perfect settings. They live quietly in the sacrifices made long before the caps were tossed, in the countless nights of worry and support, in the unspoken promises between parent and child. This graduation was not just a ceremony. It was a testament to years of perseverance, to dreams nurtured against all odds, and to the unbreakable bond that carried us through. I thought back to the parking lot where I had watched the ceremony from afar, surrounded by strangers who shared my sense of exclusion, yet also my fierce devotion. In that makeshift gathering, I had witnessed a community of parents bound by love, their pride shining as brightly as any spotlight. It was a reminder that true support cannot be measured by proximity or privilege. It is a force that endures beyond walls and screens. When I finally stood beside David, sharing that quiet reunion away from the crowd, I felt the full weight of our journey together. That moment was a victory far greater than any applause. A reaffirmation that love and commitment are the foundations upon which dreams are built. Our bond, strengthened through years of sacrifice and hope, was the true celebration. In embracing this imperfect experience, I found a new definition of dignity, not one tied to status or ceremony, but rooted in resilience, grace, and the courage to cherish what truly matters. I realized that while the day had not unfolded as I had envisioned, it had revealed the strength within me and the depth of my love for my son. This journey, with all its twists and turns, taught me that life's most meaningful moments are often found not in grand gestures, but in quiet perseverance. The pride I carry for David is not diminished by where I sat or how I watched. It is magnified by the journey we took together to get there. As I hang a simple framed photograph in my home, a candid shot of the parking lot crowd, our faces illuminated by the glow of a small screen, I am reminded daily of that day's lessons. It stands as a symbol of endurance, of love unshaken by circumstance, and of the unyielding spirit that defines true success. My legacy is not tethered to the ceremony or the accolades, but to the strength I found within myself and the unwavering support I gave to my son. In the end, true class is measured not by where we sit, but by how we carry ourselves through life's challenges, with dignity, love, and unbreakable resolve.